So we are going to have a joint session with Mr. Manoj Tanwar from Greenko and Mr. Siddhartha Kaushik from ICRA. Mr. Tanwar is going to present first, and then Mr. Kaushik is going to present, and then we'll have a joint Q&A with both the speakers. So I would request both the speakers to join me on the dais. I will introduce both of you, and then we can move to your presentations. Mr. Tanwar is going to be talking about integrated renewable energy projects. He is Senior Vice President and Commercial Head for RERTC at Greenko. He has over 15 years of experience in the power sector across domains including renewables, energy storage, conventional power generation and distribution. He is currently responsible for developing strategy for energy storage market growth and leading the team for the successful execution of the same. He has successfully led the diversification of client base beyond utilities to large-size industrial clients, and also provides policy and regulatory support for the group's green hydrogen and ammonia plants. He's an electronics and mechanical engineer and has an MBA in finance and strategy from IIM Bangalore. Then we have Mr. Kaushik. You can please come on the dais and sit. Thank you. Mr. Kaushik is going to be speaking about costs and tariffs. He is Assistant Vice President and Sector Head, Corporate Sector Ratings at ICRA. He started his career with TCS, where he successfully implemented multiple technology upgradation projects for global MNC clients in the banking, financial services, and insurance domain. He joined ICRA Limited in 2010, has significant experience in credit rating of corporate entities in India and other South Asian countries. He specializes in the field of energy and utility sector and has also served as a member of the rating committee of ICRA Nepal Limited. He's an electronics and communication engineer with a master's degree in finance. All right, I would like to invite Mr. Tanwar first for his presentation.
I think this is not come up. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I can see from your faces that I am between you and your lunch. So pardon me for that, right? Yeah. But the good news, I have only 7 slides, right? So I will not keep you waiting. Okay. To start with, yeah. Now, all of this would have been discussed, but I will still try to wrap it up fast. If you look at the peak power demand of our country, which has been projected by CEA, from this financial year up to 2030, the gap is approximately 100 gigawatt. And that's quite a moderate figure. It's a conservative figure. The next year's peak number has already been breached in this financial year. So that's one. Okay. The key, only I'm talking about the key points now, and the CAGR, or the growth rate of the energy demand as well as the peak demand, is about close to 6.5 to 7% up to 27, FY27, and from there onwards it will moderate to about 6%, right? Now, the important takeaway is that it's only 15 gigawatt, close to 15 gigawatt of peak capacity we'll require from here onwards every year. Peak capacity. Now, that's the important point. Now, we come to the point that how are we going to solve this problem? Now, this is our plan to meet that peak capacity. Yeah? This 777 figure has already been discussed by Mr. Tripathi in the earlier session. Now, the important takeaway is that yesterday, I think yesterday or day before, the Minister Saab said that by 2030, we will be meeting about 65% of our installed capacity will be based on the RE sources. So 65% of the 777 comes to around 500 gigawatt only. So that's the number, right? Now, about 400 gigawatt of the 777 is based on solar and wind. Yeah? And then we have about 50 to 60 gigawatt of large hydro, yeah? And 250 gigawatt of the thermal base, 250 to 60 based on the thermal coal-based capacity, and remaining is the nuclear, gas, and the other fuels, right? Now, how are we going to meet 15 gigawatt if we are planning to put this kind of the generation source, right? Now, so we have to meet 335 gigawatt by 2030. If you look at the sources which can meet that in an assured way, and I'm removing this solar and wind out of it, then we have only this hydro, which is about 50-60, and 250 gigawatt of thermal. And mind you, the thermal of 250 gigawatt is not available all the time, right? Some of which is in the scheduled maintenance or the unscheduled breakdown. And then there are losses also, then there are auxiliary consumptions also, right? So taking a capacity of about 75% of this installed capacity to be available, that's the best case scenario. And then about 8 to 10% of the auxiliary consumption, then 3 to 4% of the ISTS losses. So you will get around 60% thereabout of this capacity available if you want to meet your peak demand. And then you add the hydro season, assuming the peak demand comes in the hydro season, then you add 60 gigawatt to it. But still, it falls short of 335 gigawatt. So there is a problem there, right? Now we come to the point of flexibility. Now, this is an interesting thing. What happens is you need a good. So it's not only about we talk lot of things about the meeting the peak demand, the meeting the energy requirement, but see, meeting also has to be seen in the context that there is an interplay. When the sun, when the solar power comes into picture, it ramps up very fast. At about 9 o'clock, it starts ramping up very fast till 12 o'clock, and after 2, then it starts ramping down. Now you need somebody else to actually dance with that solar power with the same speed. So ramping speed is also required. If somebody is going down, you have to come up at the same speed. Now that's another challenge, right? Can we do that with the coal-based plants? Now the other countries are blessed with pondage-based hydro or gas. The other developed nations, they have a lot of gas, and that's where it is helpful to them. We have assessed that our flexibility, which we call as the flexible power, is about 11 to 18% of the total installed capacity, which is comprising of the gas, assuming we have all the gas that for our capacities and the hydropower plants. So that's another, kind of a situation here. Now, an interesting thing is how all of this is getting. Now, a broad indicator, as I think Mr. Tripathi was also speaking, that this is like a power exchange is like a stock market where you get, where you can assess the supply and demand scenario, how it is moving. Yeah. So this is now the stock market for power is our power exchange. Yeah. Now, this power exchange is an interesting market where it tells you what is going to come in the future. It's a predictor of the future. And Greenko started focusing on the pump storage because we were looking very closely at the market indicators for the last many years. And we found the cues that yes, market is going to be skewed. Very soon storage requirement is going to come up. Now, and that's where this slide comes into picture, that in 2016, we can clearly see that what was the market volume. Now this is the market cleared volume. Now if you look at in the last 2 years, in the calendar year 22 and 23, the morning, so there are 3 phases of this market. One is the afternoon, where we are adding a lot of capacity in terms of the solar capacity, and then there is a morning and evening peak where we are saying the peak demand is going to come. Now the volumes in the morning and evening hours, they have increased by 50 to 70%. There has been increase. And in the afternoon hours, there is a 30% increase in the cleared volume in the last 6-7 years. But if you look at the prices, interestingly, the prices have become 3 times. 3 times in 20, if you consider the number as compared to 2016, in 2002 and 2002-3, and this is despite CERC putting up a price cap of 12 rupees in 2022, and 10 rupees in 2023. And this is not a true reflector of where this multiple could have gone, right? So that's point number 1. The other is that if you look at the solar hours, so 30% has been the increase in the cleared volume, and 50% has been the increase in the price, the average prices. And if you look at the interesting part is the market clearing price bit, which is on this side. Then the price has actually gone down in FY23 as compared to FY22. So we are putting a lot of solar. Solar capacity is coming, and that is keeping depressed solar prices. Every year it is getting depressed, but the peak prices are going up despite putting a price cap. Now, this is an interesting slide. This sums all. Yeah, it sums all that in 2016 there was a lot of surplus in every hour. So the orange line is the sell bid, total sell bid, and the blue line is the purchase bid. Now, if you look at 2016, there was a lot of surplus in the exchange market. The surplus was high or low depending on the hours. Now, the scenario completely changes in 2022. There are 2 spots of deficit and 2 time periods of surplus. Night hours, afternoon hours, surplus hours, morning hours, evening hours, deficit hours. And the same story gets repeated in 2023, but the surpluses increase, the deficits increase by 1 gigawatt in 1 year. Yeah. So that's where we need to, and that's why I'm saying why we have to look at the exchange market, because that's the best place to understand what is the future going to be. Now, if this is the, and market gives, this is our stock market, and this gives a true reflection where we need to focus on. So we don't need to focus on something which comes in solar time or which comes in the night time. I'm not saying we should not, but I'm saying relatively more focus needs to be put on something, a generation which comes during the morning hours or during the evening hours. And with the same ramp up and ramp down speed. We should not forget that. Now, that's where I have set the stage, and I'm close to my 7th slide. So I hope I have built up the momentum. Yeah. So now this is where the storage comes into picture. So storage has primarily 2 functions. This is a verbose slide, but I will try to kind of elucidate or simplify it for you. It has primarily 2 functions: meeting the demand and managing the grid. Now, there are 2 primary use cases in terms of meeting the demand. One is when we mix it with the RE, so it becomes firm and dispatchable RE. Or when somebody says that, fine, I only need your charging capability and discharging capability. Power, you leave it to me, because every state have, because of their earlier contracts also, they have their own hours of the day when they have surpluses, they have their own hours of the day when they have deficits. So they can meet from their sources. They don't need any power source. They only need shifting. Now, that's the use case number 2. Now, in terms of the grid management, there has been a good discussion around how to use PSPs or batteries in increasing the efficiency of our transmission and distribution system. A lot of states have already put up this batteries at their substation level, and it's a good use case, so no doubt about it. Now, where does PSP come into picture is, we have also looked at that there are these RE parks or the RE corridors, where if you integrate it with the PSP, and we have discussed those results with CEA, the ministries also, and we have highlighted that in Karnataka also, in near the Gadak area, and in the Leh, Ladakh also, if you put up a PSPs there, of course in Ladakh there is going to be a challenge because of the temperature, but in case of Gadak in Karnataka, we have highlighted the use case that how you can increase the, reduce the transmission capacity requirement and increase the utilization of that capacity utilization of the transmission corridor. And they are thinking about it, how to in the integrated bid. But the only problem is that commercial bid. How to integrate that, who will collect, and those business models. But yes, there is a use case. Then there is ancillary services. As I said, that ancillary services is going to be more critical, not right now, but yes, from next year we believe it's going to be critical, because somebody would require a ramping requirement is going to be becoming more prominent. How to manage the grid when the sun is coming up and the solar power is coming up and going down. Yeah. So that's primarily the use cases. And we believe that all of these cases will be, and I'm being conservative, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, Mr. Tripathi said that CEA has estimated about 27 gigawatt of the storage requirement by 2030. But we believe that the pace of A, energy growth that we are witnessing, and B, the pace of RE installations that we are witnessing, our requirement for energy storage is going to be more than 100 gigawatt very easily. Yeah. Now, okay. Now, coming to the point of, I was asked to speak on this IRESP, how integrated renewable energy projects. So let me touch base that. Now, we have already seen that there has been a lot of bids which are being done by SECI and states also around this concept of RERTC, RE peak tenders. Yeah. So usually what happens is, and depending on the kind of the quality parameters that one wants in their RERTC power, there can be different mixes of RE. So RERTC, there are various definitions. RERTC can even mean 40% of CUF. That is also RERTC, and 80% of CUF is also RERTC, along with 50% minimum in each hour of supply. So there is a wide band. But usually how it happens is, or the integration happens is, you put depending on the so there is obviously oversizing of solar source as well as the wind source, and usually the combination of the solar and wind is from 3 times of the contracted capacity to 3.5 times of the contracted capacity. Now the mix is, sometimes people do 50-50, 1 point for 100 megawatt of contracted capacity. Somebody might do a mix of 200 gigawatt of wind and with 100 gigawatt of solar. So that's usually the typical mix which happens. And then you add about 50% of PSP capacity to it, and you get a blend of this RERTC, whose price range will be between 3.5 rupees to 4 rupees. 3.5 to 4 rupees, depending on how good and reliable wind site you have. Because solar is reliable, PSP is reliable. The question is reliability of the data or the wind data is with the wind only. Because then, I mean, on paper it might give you 80%, but in actuality it might change. So that's where, I mean, a lot of bids we are seeing, and that gives us hope that in future, a lot of shift is going to happen from these RERTC and RE peak bids towards the pure storage bids. Because no developer who is going to put up wind or who has put up wind is going to say for sure what is going to be the generation next year. No generator can do that because of the climate changes. It's not the fault of any generator. Because of the climate changes, we are seeing a lot of changes happening. Monsoons, we have seen that. If we can't predict monsoon with 100% accuracy, how can we predict wind generation with 100% accuracy? So that's a problem. And that's where we believe that, the focus of our government is 24/7 supply in all the homes. Now, to meet that, where demand is also uncertain and generation is also uncertain, there needs to be a bridge, the bridge called energy storage. So this is the small discussion on how this is going to work. And now, if you look at this chart here, the blue line is the solar generation, the topmost straight line, the black line is the demand, and then in between you have the orange line, how the RERTC comes into, how the RERTC graph gets, this is average RERTC supply graph. There also you will see a problem in the morning and evening peak. RERTC will not also solve all of your 100% morning and evening peak problem. Yeah. Now the last slide, so I can have some smiles on your faces. The peak demand that we are witnessing is because there is a sharper increase in the peak demand as compared to the base demand, as we discussed. Plus the trends in the short-term procurement. If you look at the power exchange numbers we have seen, but if you look at the deep portal numbers also, where the power gets procured for 1 month to 3 months to 4 months, there we are also seeing there is no price cap of 10 rupees, which CRC has put. There, if you look at those numbers for the peak power purchase tenders, it's from 11 rupees to 19 rupees. So we are already witnessing, if the lid is opened up. We believe if the lid of 10 rupees cap is opened up, more storage investments are going to come in the market because they can clearly see the viability of those investments. Second, the flexibility, I'm on point number 4, the flexibility requirement from the coal-based plants where they need to do the dance with the solar going up and going down is going to be impossible, and we believe that the flexibility requirement is going to be about 150 gigawatt by 2030. If you are putting 300 gigawatt of solar, then you need to be ready with a source which can actually ramp up and ramp down by 150 gigawatt, at least half of that 300. That's the broad thumb rule. And energy storage to provide that cost-effective flexibility to the grid, as well as ensuring firm and dispatchable supply. We believe that more than 100 gigawatt of energy storage is going to be required. It's a simple maths. If we believe that our demand is going to be, if we believe that our solar and wind is going to be more than 400 gigawatt by 2030, at least 1/4 of storage you will require to integrate that into the grid. At least 1/4. That's why 100 gigawatt is a plain simple number. Yeah? So here I end. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tanwar. We'll now move to Mr. Kaushik's presentation on cost and tariffs.
Hi everyone, thank you for this opportunity. In fact, Mr. Tanwar and Mr. Tripathi has made my job a bit easier. In terms of regulations and understanding the need for storage, I think more or less we are covered. So I've structured the presentation in 5 heads. First, I'm going to talk about why there has been a sluggish pace in capacity additions in hydro. What are the reasons behind that? What are the challenges behind that? And then why solar and wind are leading the way and hydro is lagging behind against in terms of capacity additions, and what kind of policy push there has been from ministry. And finally, central state PSUs still have their best place to actually meet this challenge. So we are well aware of all the benefits of hydropower projects in terms of long economic life, multiple benefits in terms of irrigation, flood control. They lead to economic development of that area, and they also result in greater employment opportunities for local people, apart from grid balancing and minimal O&M. But despite all these benefits, what we have seen is that the trend of capacity addition in hydropower has been very, very low, the capacity growth. So during 2005 to 2015, the bulk of the growth was driven by thermal, and subsequently with competitive tariffs, greater regulatory clarity, and greater demand from DISCOMs, what we have seen is that solar and wind have taken the place of thermal segment. And incrementally, while capacity additions are still taking place aggressively, what we have seen is that hydro capacity additions have remained behind the pace. They have lagged. So overall, as you can see on the chart on the left, there has been a consistent decline in the installed hydropower capacity vis-a-vis overall capacity in the country. And as on date, on the right hand, you can see it's around 11% of the installed capacity. There are many factors which hinder private sector participation. There can be geological surprises, topological risks. You can read the factors here. You're all well aware of those. The thing about hydropower project is it's not done until it is done. We'll get to know the final tariff, the final project cost only when it gets completed. Even in case of certain projects which have almost achieved 85%, 90%, there can be some final hurdle, some technical constraint, some issues in the HRT, something or the other would come up, and it can delay the overall implementation schedule. It can result in increase in capital costs. It can result in time and cost overruns. Now, at that point in time, apart from the technical challenges, the bigger challenge for the developer is to absorb these additional costs, for the lenders to finance these costs. So at that point also, there can be multiple slippages. So that's the principal reason why we have seen lesser participation from private sector players. On the chart on the right, you can see that hardly 800 megawatt capacity has come up, while overall CPSU state government capacity also is lower. But within the overall mix, private participation has been very low. And that's the principal difference between the way hydro capacity is getting added and the way solar and wind capacities are getting added. This is a trend in capital cost per megawatt, although it's very difficult to generalize any cost per megawatt for a hydro project. Every project is unique, no two projects are alike. As you can see, a couple of projects like Chutak and TLDP of NHPC in 2013, they have very high cost per megawatt. But then overall, you can see there is a trend of increase in capital cost per megawatt. Latest Network Mori, again, is not the right example. It's a very small 60 megawatt capacity. But there again, it's around 20 crore per megawatt. But 13 crore, 14 crore, 15 crore would be the current capital cost per megawatt in terms of projects which are getting commissioned now. But anything can derail these costs. There can be much higher cost per megawatt also. How do hydropower projects tariffs stack up against other competing technologies? So on the left, what I have charted is the tariff roughly 5.4 rupees. That's the blended tariff for central CPSU projects from 17 to 21. So not many projects, no projects have come beyond after FY21. As I mentioned, just 60 megawatt of SJVN has come up, that too in November, December. So other than that, again, coming project of NIPCO 600 megawatt is excluded from this because that's pending tariff determination. So that's around 5.4 rupees per unit. Now that's substantially higher than, let's say, a solar tariff or a wind tariff or the RE-RTC projects we just talked about. And even the thermal bids are actually lower than these. Spot power tariffs, we have already discussed, they've actually shooted up. And overall power purchase cost from DISCOMs also, you can see that it's actually higher than that. So that's where the issue is. The tariff acceptance from DISCOMs also is not there when they can see that incremental projects, even like RE-RTC projects, which have much higher reliability compared to, let's say, plain vanilla wind or solar projects or hybrid schemes. So there, the tariffs are actually lower. So that's the principal reason why there are not many takers for these projects also. Well, there have been multiple developments that have taken place on a policy front, and the need for storage is well established. We are yet to see significant pickup in demand for these projects. So a principal segment which can lead to this demand is pumped storage projects. That's where a lot of push has been, right, starting from 2019 when there were budgetary support and enabling infrastructure incentives for developers, waiver of ISTS charges, energy storage obligation. Again, certain projects were identified for CPSUs to look at around 74 gigawatt. And then guidelines to promote development of pump storage projects were introduced in April 23. So I'll just skip this slide. This is talking about enabling infrastructure and budgetary support for flood moderation. But interestingly, the third bullet, that's where tariff rationalization measures. So these measures can provide flexibility to the developers in terms of reducing their tariff and making it more attractive for distribution companies. There can be an elongation of debt repayment schedule, or there can be backloading of tariffs. So I'll be getting to those points as well, which will make this point number 3 clear. Also, hydro purchase obligation, that's something that was introduced much earlier, and there has been certain revisions. I'll get to that also. So now, as against earlier trajectory of hydro purchase obligations, those have now been toned down significantly. So as against, let's say, achieving 2.82% of consumption by FY30, those have been brought down to 1.33%. There has been very staggered response from state DISCOMs, from SERCs in terms of coming out with their own notified HPO trajectories, and few states have come out, and mostly the southern states, they are yet to come out with the same. If these HPO notified levels are also met, it would result in roughly 8 gigawatt of projects which will fall under these incentives, and these now include cross-border projects as well. So whatever power we are importing, subsequently, let's say project like Nikachu coming up, or some other Kolangchu project coming up, or some other projects coming up from Bhutan or Nepal, those will be eligible for CBT, for these meeting HPO obligations. So this is that ESO trajectory on a conservative basis also. If we are to achieve, let's say, a 5% increase in electricity generation, then by FY30, roughly 50 to 60 gigawatt of 4-hour storage would be required for meeting the 4% ESO notified obligation. There's not much uptake on this so far in terms of SERCs notifying these for respective states, but if this trajectory is maintained, there would be certain incentives. I think that we have already discussed in an earlier session the major guidelines that have been given in the PSP notification in April 23. So I'll just skip this part. So in terms of PSPs, what we have done is, let's say, what you see here is for varying capital cost per megawatt, what can be the landed tariff? There are certain assumptions behind this. This is a 8 gigawatt hour capacity with round trip efficiency of 75%, and we have taken cost of pumping energy as 3 rupees per unit, and we have not considered any transmission charges here. So under those assumptions, there are certain rough estimates, but then again, every project is different. What can be the head available? What can be the energy storage requirement, reservoir capacity? What kind of energy can be generated? So all these factors, what number of cycles that can be achieved. So these factors can greatly vary what kind of tariff would be required for meeting, let's say. So this particular tariff is estimated basis a 16.5% ROE and basis CERC guidelines. And more recently, draft regulations have also been announced, and with respect to hydropower projects, you can only focus on the bold area. So that's where certain changes are there, higher incentives of 0.5% in terms of ROE for the new projects, which are storage-based or pump storage projects. So those 0.5% extra ROE is allowed. And so that's point number 3 with respect to depreciation. That's where certain elongation of depreciation schedule is what we have seen from 12 years to 15 years. Interestingly, in the regulations, they've also specified that the developer can go for a higher tenure also, possible 18 years tenure as well, which can result in further lowering of tariff if the same is acceptable to the distribution company. So anything lower than advised by assessed basis the CERC norms would be agreeable to the regulator. There is some increase in O&M escalation and marginal change in the interest on working capital. But basis these workings, so only for the storage type projects, what we have seen is that, let's say, for a 10 crore per megawatt project, capital cost, we have seen that the levelized tariff on account of higher ROE and higher O&M, despite, let's say, elongation. So elongation is not going to really change your tariff, levelized tariff. So your overall levelized tariff increases by 30 basis points. If it's a 15 crore per megawatt project, it increases by 46 bips. Now, interestingly, because of elongation of depreciation tenure, which corresponds to your debt repayment, this first year tariff actually comes down despite increase in levelized tariff for these projects. So in case of 10 crore per megawatt, it comes down by 20 basis points. In case of a 15 crore megawatt project, per megawatt project, this comes down by 28 basis points. So while there is an increase in the overall levelized tariff on account of elongation of depreciation to 15 years on a normative basis, there would be some reduction in the first year tariff. Naturally, as we go forward, these tariffs are going to increase to come up to the levelized tariff level. So in terms of sensitivity of how this levelized tariff moves, so what we can take away from this table is that first and foremost, why this table was there in the first place, there is very great uncertainty with respect to ascertaining a capital cost for a project. So it can greatly vary, it can be higher also. But then again, what we have seen is that for every 1 crore per megawatt increase in capital cost, basis the current regulations, not the draft regulations, basis the current regulations, there is a 50 to 60 basis point increase in the levelized tariff. Whereas, let's say an interest rate increase of 100 basis points again would result in roughly 10 to 13 basis point increase. So that's what you can take away from this. So this is a plain vanilla 10 crore per megawatt levelized tariff if no incentives are there, no backloading is there. So this is how the trend would look like, higher in the initial years. Post 12 years of depreciation, the tariff would come down, and then again it will increase largely with O&M expenses. So here the levelized tariff is 5.12, and the first year tariff is 5.56. Now, if there is budgetary support for enabling infrastructure, 1 crore per megawatt is considered, then that will bring down the overall levelized tariff from 5.12 in the previous slide to 4.61. Even the first year tariff would come down, but largely the trajectory remains the same. Now, that's where elongated debt tenure helps. So let's say if the debt tenure is higher, while the levelized tariff is same as the one you saw the slide before, 5.12, 5.11. But what we are seeing here is that the first year tariff has been brought down from 5.56 to 5.15 basis point, roughly a 30 basis point. So that's where the difference is coming because of elongation of debt repayment tenure. And it's more, let's say, stretched out in terms of initial 15 years, the tariff is low, and then it comes down and then it increases. Now, let's say if no other incentive is there, but we look at only the backloading. Backloading is nothing but trying to find out the first year tariff with, let's say, annual estimation or escalation of, let's say, 2% or a 3%, basis that annual escalation, the first year tariff would increase for the life of the project. But then again, the first year tariff would come down. This won't have an impact on the overall levelized tariff, but the first year tariffs would be lower. There can be multiple ways in which first year tariffs can be brought down. Like I mentioned, anything that's below CERC norms would be acceptable to the regulator, would be acceptable to the beneficiary also. So it can be in terms of lower O&M cost, or let's say slight reduction in ROE in the initial years. So that's again a call a developer has to take. What areas they can actually work with. If all benefits are combined, levelized tariff for this project is expected to come down to 4.6, while there would be a reduction in the first year tariff, which will be 3.75. While it's still higher, it's much lower than 5 rupees to 556 paisa tariff that we saw in the first slide. So that's where all the benefits combined can result in significant lowering of tariff in the first year. In terms of planned capacity additions, in the next 6 years, we see that overall roughly 14-15 gigawatt is what is planned. Majority is coming from, again, from central sector projects. And even if, let's say, a similar graph that we have drawn on the right is that there is a 5% increase in electricity generation, with the planned capacity addition, there would be roughly overall 9.3% is what hydroelectric generation would constitute as a percentage of the overall electricity generation from all sources combined. And finally, given the risks that are there, we feel that despite all the incentives, CPSUs are the best place in terms of meeting these challenges. They have the sufficient expertise in terms of project management, project development, and they have technical expertise also across various regions. And in terms of their financial muscle as well, they have great balance sheet strength in terms of raising a low-cost debt. So that's going to be a key determinant in, let's say, your determination of your hydropower tariffs, or even the biggest risk, which is the execution. That's something that the CPSUs are best positioned to handle. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kaushik. Great presentations from both our speakers. We do have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. I can take one question from my end to both the speakers, and then I'll move to the audience questions. Mr. Tanwar, my question to you is that Greenko has announced a lot of PSPs, like Pinnapuram is also in advanced stages of construction. I just wanted to understand, are the PSPs easier to implement when you compare them with the conventional hydropower, since I assume Greenko's projects are all off the river kind of projects? Can you just highlight what are the advantages in terms of implementation of these projects? How easy has it been for Greenko?
Yeah, so first of all, it's not easy. Yeah? So that's a short answer. Now, how to make it easy? Yeah? See, as you mentioned, that if you see, a lot of issues come when you try to build something close to a river, right? I mean, if you create so many locational constraints that you have to build something which is close to a river or close to a particular hill, then you lose that flexibility. Once you choose a site which is to your suitability, where you believe that the geology is supporting you, right? And that's where we initially thought that we have to take it, off the river projects. We will only do off the river projects because that helps us reduce the risk of the geology. The second part is we worked with a lot of statutory agencies, and as Mr. Tripathi was also highlighting, we were able to convince them how to do a parallel process of this approval as well as excavation, building the approach roads, only doing the excavation, not doing the construction, right? So that helps actually expedite these projects. Otherwise, if we do it in the conventional manner, obviously, apart from the risk, there are issues related to the development timeline, and which increases my IDC also. Yeah. So if I can do this approval and construction parallelly, then it saves me the IDC cost. Plus, the third point is that uh, it's a technical area. I mean, this is not just a building or not just putting some kind of a cement and steel anywhere, right? So it's a technical thing. People who have done a lot of hydro, they understand that there are a lot of complexity and there are a lot of calculation engineering required. So the third focus area is to build a good team in-house. If you are able to build a good team, that actually helps you mitigate a lot of risk which keep emerging. So it's not once you have laid the blueprint, then you have to go by it. No, the blueprint will keep changing as you get onto the ground and see a lot of issues. These are the three things that we work internally as well externally that helps us build it in a cost-effective and in a timely manner.
Have agencies like CA and the state government,
Yes.
etc., been supportive?
Of course, I mean, you won't believe people say that COVID is a great disruptor. I mean, from our side, we can say COVID has been a great enabler for us, and I tell you why. Because COVID was the only time where we could do a presentation to secretary of any ministry, to CA people, 1 to 2 hours, and they are sitting in their offices and they were listening to us. Where in today, if I ask someone to listen to us for 1 to 2 hours on a team, they will flatly refuse. So that was the time when we actually showed them all calculations, when we actually could convince them easily, and they had all the patience, and they were not distracted by their world, by their regular work. And that actually helped us. So
Right.
I would say, had COVID not have happened, I think things would not have been so easily. I mean, so I'm just.
All right. I'll move to Mr. Kaushik now. Mr. Kaushik, in one of your slides where you were talking about, where you were comparing the different tariffs for different sources, you showed RE/RTC tariffs as well. And you considered storage there. So was that battery-based storage that you've considered or pump storage?
So that's a combination, and this tariff is basically the bids that have been won. So those 4.1, 4.7.
Based on
are
those
bids.
results. But in your view, which is more viable right now? A battery-based storage kind of a RE/RTC arrangement or a PSP kind of RE/RTC arrangement?
So in terms of cost per megawatt and efficiencies, and let's say the final tariff, pump storage tariff will always be better than the battery tariff. But then again, there are multiple implementation challenges. Battery can be developed quite easily.
Quite easily.
May not be that easy, but on a relative basis compared to a storage, because storage is a whole different animal actually.
So it's not very
So
crystal
as-
clear
if,
which
if,
is
if
which
battery
is better.
costs come down, even then they'll have to come down significantly to meet even current level of PSP tariffs.
Right. All right. I'll move to some audience questions now. I'll start from the right. Any questions or comments on the right? Can you please bring the mic to him? So please also let us know the speaker that you would like to address the question to, and would request for short questions.
Hello. Myself Pradipta Kumar Swai from Entura Hydro Tasmania. So my question is to Mr. Kaushik. So have you considered ramp up rate and ramp up down for your pump turbines for the Pinnapuram project while designing? And has it any importance in India?
Your question is for Mr. Tanwar then, I guess.
Mr. Tanwar, sorry.
Yes, we have considered all these ramp rates things. And if you look at it, that's why we have 2 set of turbine combinations of 250s and 120 sets. So we have built different use cases, and that's why we came up with these 2 different configurations of the turbine sets. And also we have developed different kind of models that what kind of RE/RTC supply, what is the ramp rate requirement, and we did all that model testing. We clearly understand that storage is not only, we don't want storage to have a use case of only doing energy shifting. Why not to balance the grid? Why not to give that ramping support? And why not to have that, provide that ancillary support? Now, all those considerations, they have been thought through, and that's where we have designed our machines. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions on the right? No? I'll move to the middle column. Any questions? Can you please bring the mic to the fifth row?
How you will rank hydrogen fuel cell over battery energy storage?
Your question is to Mr.
How you?
Kaushik.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Kaushik, would you like to take that question?
I
Anybody can answer.
Mr. Tanwar, would you like to take hydrogen fuel cell
How-
versus battery?
How you will rank a hydrogen fuel cell over battery energy storage?
Right. See, hydrogen fuel cell versus battery. This is with respect to the electric mobility, right? Now, what happens is because that's where they have their best use cases. Now, hydrogen fuels. In battery, the problem is that even the best energy density which lithium gives, right? Still, the battery size is quite bulky if you use it for a long haulage, right? Now that's where you have to find something else which is lighter and smaller in size, right? But gives the same energy density. Now that's where the hydrogen fuel cell comes into picture, though it's costly right now as compared to the battery. But the distinct, if you put a battery in a ship or in a long haulage truck, then it will take a lot of space, right? And you are actually transporting battery instead of the load that you are supposed to do, right? So that's where this hydrogen fuel cells are going to come. Now, as soon as this green hydrogen prices are going to come up, we will see a good offtake of the hydrogen cells also. Yeah.
And what about hydrogen ICE engines, the kind of combustion engines that are coming up with hydrogen as well?
See, as I say, that it all depends on the economics. Economics will drive the demand. So as soon as the green hydrogen economics become palatable, all these new kind of use cases or technologies will propel.
Any questions on the left?
Good afternoon. My question is to Mr. Manoj. My name is Deep Prakash from Toshiba, India. In last page of your presentation, you mentioned that if the integration of RE is 100, then at least 1/4 backup should be by PSP or storage. So is there any computation or reference on your statement?
So you have said, so that's the thumb rule, sir, that I mentioned. But if one were to design a RE-RTC solution, which let's say gives 70% of CUF in a year, then there are a lot of variables based on which one actually decides how much storage is actually required. Now, I tell you the example. Now, if I have a very good site, let's say a site in Rajasthan, I'm forgetting its name, so we did that, and we found out that the site is so complementary with the solar generation that actually it reduces my storage requirement. That's why I said a band of RE-RTC of let's say 70 to 80% CUF can be achieved in a price range of 3 rupees 50 paisa, 3 rupees 40 paisa to 4 rupees 10 paisa. Now that's the broad range. If you have a very good wind sites that is available, the wind which is available throughout the year, not very unlike the Tamil Nadu sites where there is a huge concentration of the wind generation only during the monsoon season and in the only during the monsoon, and in the winter there is effectively 10% or 5% of wind. Now those kind of wind sites you are not able to generate a RE-RTC, good RE-RTC solution. So Tanwar is a site in Rajasthan where we did some data and we found out this is a fantastic site where in terms of the seasonal availability of the wind power and also the availability of the wind power, complementarity to the solar power during the day was fantastic, and that's where we were able to find out that you require very less storage, but at least you require 30% of the storage. In a relatively good wind site, you actually require 50% of the storage. That's where I gave a thumb rule that at least because why I'm saying 25%, because a lot of in the last 3 years, a lot of discoms what they have done is they have actually shifted their agriculture demand to the afternoon hours. For that, actually you don't need storage. If you have shifted the demand during the afternoon hours when the solar is coming, then you don't need storage. So after adjusting for that, now that's a thumb rule that we believe that has to be there. It has to be there. Now, how much in that storage, how much PSP will come, how much battery will come, it all depends on the economics. If the economics remain favorable for a PSP, obviously we will require for PSPs more than the batteries. But we believe that now the other problem which people are not kind of witnessing, and which we are constantly looking at the data and identifying, is the availability issue. If people are developing multiple use cases of battery, and those use cases, the demand is actually shooting up, then where will you get the battery itself? The problem is that even if you develop a low cost battery tomorrow, like for example, the EV is picking up rapidly. Lot of this China, Europe, there is a lot of uptick in the EVs. Now in India also there is an uptick, but not like China and Europe. Now the point is that you need batteries for that. And every car manufacturer in our country is introducing EV models now every month. So there is a lot of battery requirement. EV does not mean, this car body or a good seat. It actually, the main cost is the battery. So if you are creating so many use cases, the availability is going to become a challenge. So that's where we believe sometimes, something is economical, but it's like, it's not available, or it has a lead time, good lead time. But our country cannot stop its progress. So that's a critical thing. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. We'll just take one last question and then close the session.
Yes, sir. The demand projection is around 777 gigawatts, by 2030. The EV also is adopting, adoption of EV is taking at this thing. Is it factored, sir, in that 777 gigawatts? And that is one. Second thing, how much of transmission losses and all, is it factored that also in that 777? Otherwise, your capacity should have been maybe 1,000 plus. So these two are the just technical things. Thank you.
So I think transmission losses definitely would be factored in, but again, that's a government number. So I'm not sure to what extent EV would have been factored in that, but certainly transmission losses would have been factored in.
Right. Thank you.
I just want to add one thing. This 777 numbers, one thing which I think has not been factored into is the green hydrogen demand requirement for that, because we are targeting 5 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030, which essentially means that 1 million ton requires about 7.5 to 8 gigawatt of RERTC supply with 85% of CUF. Now, 7.5 gigawatt or 8 gigawatt of RERTC into 3 times is your RE capacity requirement. So, which means 25 gigawatt of RE capacity you require for 1 million ton. Now, for 5, you actually require so much of. Now, that I don't think has been factored into this. Yeah? So that will add another complexity and the requirement of storage.
Right. Thank you. On that note, we'll close the session. A big hand for both the speakers, Mr.